Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Natalie. Welcome to my home in West London. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Before today's episode, click the join button below to support all of the storytelling we do on this channel. Our growing community of members help to directly fund more videos so we can capture these extraordinary homes from around the world. So join today to receive early and exclusive access to new Homeworthy videos.
Hi, I'm Natalie Tredgett. I'm an interior designer, and you are in my home in West London. We have been in this home for about 7 years. We ended up in this particular area because we love tennis and we love being by the river. Growing up in Canada, nature is really important to us, and living in such an amazing city like London, we wanted our weekends to feel a little bit like the English countryside. One of the things that we love so much about this area is that we're right next to a beautiful palace called Fulham Palace, and there are these gorgeous gardens. So you can almost feel like you're living in a Georgian fantasy world. These large windows, these huge sash windows open from the bottom, and you can literally walk out and see an extraordinary trees and beautiful flowers and bees that are kept. It's sort of a little oasis in West London. When we saw this house, one of the things that I loved so much about it was that where the kitchen was situated. It was right in the middle. Victorian townhouses tend to have a traditional layout. You have a room in the front, a little room in the middle that are attached by a fireplace, and then there's a large expanse in the back. And generally what people do is that they knock out the entire back and put a huge kitchen. And so therefore you're really only living in 3 spaces. But this house was somewhat different because they use this middle room that kind of gathers rubbish or a coat here or a dog bed there, or maybe a desk that you sometimes work at, and you're using it for much better space, your kitchen, which is in the heart of your home. Welcome to my entrance. This entrance really sets the tone for the house. I've chosen to use the color pink because pink is one of my favorite colors. It's not a color often used in an entrance, and so I think that a lot of people who come in will know exactly what to expect. Something different, unusual, playful, and fun. In London entrances, especially in Victorian townhouses, we don't have a lot of space. And often in entrances, we'd like to have a surface where we can use to put down keys and the post. I went shopping at a beautiful antique light shop, and I saw this uplighter, and I thought that the shape and the size would be perfect for this entrance, which is not that wide. But what's so special about it is that it is a light and works as a night light for those who come in a little bit later and want to have a soft light as they come in. I love to play with antiques, with original moldings, with original architecture, but I like to twist them a little bit, try and think about them in a more contemporary way. In this entrance, because I wanted to set the tone of fun, I used a traditional Victorian cornice. It's called flower and post. And what it does is that it's a beautiful sort of ornate cornice, and at every little region you put a flower and then a post. And I learned from my wonderful Nicholas Haslam, who I used to work for, this fun little trick where you take a tennis ball, you cut it in half, you fill it with plaster, and you position it in the same place that you would put a flower and a post. And what it does is that it brings a contemporary twist and a playfulness in the entrance, but keeps its Victoriana. And then with the chandelier, I wanted to bring a lot more of those particular shapes, which is why I went with a vintage 1960s light fixture. I like mixing old and new because the tension between the two brings a lot of interest. It's fun, it's playful, and I love circular shapes. Traditionally in Victorian townhouses, they tend to have a long, long corridor. And what I did is I added these tiny little walls, which I refer to as nib walls, because I wanted to decorate this area very differently than this area. And with this particular nib wall, because it creates a little return, it allows you to create this space and paint it one color, because on the opposite side, you have a different color. So it shortens a very, very long space, and then it allows you to play with color and decoration and create a zone to know that this is the entrance and this is the corridor leading to the house. Here on the right, I wanted also to use a really beautiful rug up the stairs. This gets a lot of traffic in most houses, this particular stretch. So doing something busy is practical. And what I did is that I sourced a beautiful Swedish vintage rug in France, and I cut it in half and laid it on my stairs. I love the pattern, I love the color. The busyness is just enough to hide all those dirty paws, dirty feet, and constant traffic. And it also brings a visual interest to the space as you walk in, because it tends to be quite structural, almost like a sculpture, that I didn't want to ignore. So now we're going to go to the left and into our family room. Now we're in our family room. This is the first room off the entrance. It tends to be almost a waiting room during the day. We come in, we dump our things, our shopping comes here, the coats slung over the furniture. But at night, this is where this room comes alive. It is at the front of the house, which is north facing. I decided to paint it this beautiful dark teal hue because I wanted to feel cozy at night. The fireplace comes on, and we tend to enjoy spending the evening in here. But during the day, it acts as a busy zone for waiting, grabbing, and going. Above the fireplace is a beautiful piece of work from one of my favorite artists and dear friends, Selena Beaudry. These are paper piles. She creates these beautiful compositions where she paints several pieces of paper, and then she lays the colors by building these paper piles, and she's elevated it by putting it in a Perspex box. I love the fact that this particular piece complements my walls. Often with art, it's tempting to paint your walls white because you want your artwork to stand out. But sometimes it's great to consider a darker color because it makes the art more elevated. So we use the fireplace at night, and we love it in the winter because it adds a lot of warmth to the particular space. We sit here and have a nightcap after a dinner party, or the two of us, my husband and I, and sometimes with the kids, we hang out here. It's not a big space. It's a place where literally you can put your feet up on the coffee table because it's a soft piece of fabric. And we love just hanging out and chatting and just taking a deep breath after a long day. The fact that the ceiling is painted the same color as the walls allows some drama into the room. I think that it lowers the ceiling ever so slightly, which sometimes we don't want to do, but in a night cozy room, we definitely want to. And we love to close the doors to the kitchen. These are the only two doors we have in the entire house. And it just shuts the entire house down, and we just remain here in a little cozy nook. So these chest of drawers hide a lot of sins. We fill it with papers, extra pencils for my children's school run. We fill them with candles and a few other fancy plates and things that don't fit in the cupboards. But I think that they anchor the fireplace beautifully. They're vintage, they're from the 60s, and they've been recently ebonized to give it a bit of a glossy look. It matches the walls because I've given a very glossy, lacquered look to the walls. I wanted this room to shine a little bit because it is slightly dark, but we love it because during the day you don't get the same feeling as you do at night. The lamps were found at an antique shop here in London. They were original vases from India, and I've elevated them by dressing them with a black base and these quite dramatic shades. There are certain rules about shades, that they shouldn't be bigger than 2.5 times the width or 2.5 times the size of a lamp base. But I sometimes like to play a little bit with the size of the shades. I think lamps are sculptural. I think they should be treated as such. They are like jewelry to the room, and they're so incredibly additive. And yellow is one of my favorite colors, this particular tone. And as I stare at them, I get to know them more and more over time. There's such beautiful detail. And this space here could be this little space for the base, to me, is very, very modern. And I'd like to find a way to use those shapes and replicate that in other ways. When my husband and I were first married, it was traditional for couples to develop a registry and get all sorts of plates and glasses and silverware, which we did, and I love them very much. But one of the things I really wanted were these beautiful green chargers from Richard Ginori. And instead of hiding them away and only bringing them out on those special occasions, I've hung them on the wall as art. I just love to look at them. And I think that this circular shape is very modern and unexpected. So these chairs are 1980 Milo Bond chairs. They're from the US, but I bought them here in London from a dealer. I love the way that they swivel. It's incredibly practical to have tidy little chairs. And because of their shape, their rounded back, they're incredibly comfortable. I wanted to upholster them in a pattern because I think that the room is quite sobering in terms of its texture. And pattern allows you to bring in that extra texture. And this one in particular has a touch of yellow in that highlights the piece of work above the fireplace and the lamps. So I wanted to bring in something quite subtle, but just highlight it ever so slightly with the accent color yellow. If you look at the rug is originally from Pakistan. It uses this beautiful wool. It has a very Moroccan feel for it. But what drew me to this particular carpet, this rug, was the beautiful tones and the shades. I think some of this is completely unexpected. Color patterns that I wouldn't naturally pick, but this is exactly what I wanted. Because with all this shiny smoothness that exists everywhere, you need to create some contrast. And so I did so with this textural rug, but the textural rug in tone is similar. And so it feels very, very quiet in its approach, even though it's quite bold. This piece of furniture I had made when my husband and I were first married. Every time I see it, I think I'm going to get rid of it because maybe I want to change, maybe I want a harder surface, but it seems to stand the test of time. It's so practical. I love the way these little elements kick out. It doesn't take up space, but equally what I've done in this room is that I've used this beautiful Japanese 1980s table. It has a leaf that comes down and could be raised on occasion. Sometimes you need just a little bit more table and the legs kick out. And sometimes what I do when I'm working from home is that I perch at the corner of this stool and I find myself working here on a laptop from time to time on the weekends. I just love the way that this space is versatile. I like furniture that's usable in a variety of different ways. I always like to think about how can this be formal, how can this be informal, how can we add sleekness to rough texture, the idea of old and new. Sometimes contrast allows to bring interest to individual items, putting things side by side. That is, one is elevated and the other one is not so, putting junk next to fortune. This is where the magic happens. This is where I feel it really highlights the beauty in each of the pieces. I'm originally from Canada, and moving here in the UK, I only came to appreciate beautiful curtains when I've arrived. They have a way of really making a room feel like cotton balls. It just warms the soul to have beautiful curtains in a window. These curtains, I love the fabric. It's by Christopher Farr. It has a very relaxed feel to them. And I love the way that you contrast a shiny surface with something that's a little bit rougher. And I feel that the fabric in these curtains do exactly that. The gathering at the top is almost just a pull, and it just slopes forward. It's not fussy, and it's a bit messy, and I quite like it because it shows the thickness of the fabric. Fabric like this in a window has this unbelievable ability of absorbing sound. It adds so much to a room. You feel so warm and comfortable when a window is properly dressed. This window is facing the street side of the property, so people come in through the entrance. And I love these sunshades. They're from Tatiana Tafour. It is an abaca, which is a banana leaf, and it's incredibly sustainable. But the magic of this, apart from being beautiful, is that it allows a lot of light into the property. But as you come in off the street, magically, people on the street don't see into the property, so it provides a lot of privacy. And I think that these are the most magical blinds in a window. These frames on the wall, this art piece was the very first piece of art that I bought with my husband. We were traveling in the Middle East, and we went to the beautiful city of Damascus, which is the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. One evening on these narrow little streets, there was a gentleman just selling art. And I just approached him and asked him questions because I thought that these shapes are rather peculiar. But the shapes are actually of the women of Syria. And if you go in closer, you can see that some of them are looking at you with one eye, two eyes. Some of them are not looking at you. But they're very contemporary and slightly naive. And I love the notion of these. You know, they're very powerful, and they bring back a lot of wonderful memories with my husband in the early stages of our marriage. And I think of them often. You know, I love the color of the yellow. I love the contrast of the black. I decided to frame them in some wood so that they didn't feel too contemporary, that they had sort of an oldie worldy feel to them. And I think that they're incredibly powerful pieces and something I will always cherish. When we walked into this house, the bones of the property were amazing. However, it had had a lot of time to collect dust. We had to redo all the plumbing and the lighting. We changed some of the configurations of the room in order to accommodate modern living, and we added a room at the back of the house instead of a traditional conservatory, which tends to get very hot in the summer and cold in the winter. My approach to interior design is really mixing old and new. I don't really look at something and say this is Victorian and therefore it must sort of appear to be Victorian, and nor do I ignore the bones of the property. I think context is really important. I think that there is a lot to celebrate about the past, but just finding a way to twist it so that you can modernize it both for your day-to-day life, but also having fun with redeveloping an old aesthetic and making it new. Now we are going to go to the kitchen, which is the heart of the home. I love this kitchen, and the reason why I love this kitchen is because it's not a kitchen. It is effectively a corridor into the back of the house. I think it's a very clever use of space. In these Victorian townhouses, the reception area, which is the front of the house, is usually divided into two spaces. A space where you sit because there's a natural ability to create a seating area, there's a fireplace, and then there's this second room. Some people have decorated it as a desk area with some bookcases for television. Others use it as a dining space. But for some reason, the second half of the front reception room, in my opinion, is not as well used for square footage, which is why I love the fact that the kitchen is here. When you think of kitchens, we often think of very, very large spaces with an island. But if a restaurant can serve 250 tables a night in a galley space, why can't we in our own homes? In London, in these beautiful Victorian houses, we are gifted with very high ceilings. When you think of kitchen design, the height at which we stop our kitchen units tend to be much lower than the ceilings. But what I love so much about this is that you can use the top part of the kitchen cabinets for plates and glasses that you only use on the occasion. When I designed this kitchen, I specifically designed it as a corridor. It just happens to be a kitchen, which is why I've put a runner in the center. I've added a beautiful light fixture, as you would do in a corridor, and I've dressed the area with some more cornicing, like the entrance. When I chose the design for the kitchen, I've specifically chosen a very simple, modern, nondescript door. The reason for that is I wanted it to feel like a hallway. I didn't really want to draw any attention to any detail. The stone is also something very, very simple because I just wanted it to blend. But the real asset of this kitchen is the runner, the light fixture, and the cornicing. I wanted to draw attention to the ceiling, and I have worked with this beautiful, wonderful specialist painter called The Finish Effect. They created this beautiful textured finish, and the color is a rhubarb which matches and highlights the rug underneath. We cook a lot in this kitchen. I know there's not a lot of counter space, but we use every square inch of it. Every cupboard is filled with utensils, food, plates, serving, pots and pans. And we cook in here galore. We bake, we make, we cook, we entertain. I have 3 gorgeous kids. There's nothing I love more than having all their friends over, and especially when they have all their friends at the same time. There's nothing that I love more than cooking to entertain. I'm not so great cooking to feed because the creativity is limited, but when there are a lot of people, it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner all day long. I wasn't always an interior designer. My career path is not as direct as some. I started off in management consulting. I have a master's in business, which I did here in the UK at the University of Edinburgh. But I've always worked on the creative side of businesses. In my management consultancy, I worked with a team who created new sources of revenue for organizations who needed to find new markets and new ways to explore. And it required a lot of creative thinking. But as soon as my work was done, I was always in the pages of magazines trying to imagine spaces. Home is very important to me. It's a place where I retreat and I, spend time with my family and friends, where I like to self-express, and really where I just want to sit and be myself. So it wasn't a surprise that I decided in the end to make a career change. I did so before children. I wanted to work after I had my children. And I thought that management consulting, as wonderful as the career was a little bit too demanding in order for me to also be present in home. So I decided to go with my passion, which is interiors. I retrained, worked with a very well-known designer here in London who gave me my start, which I'm forever grateful for. His name is Nicholas Haslam, and I started my path on interior design. Beside the kitchen, I'm going to lead you to our dining area. Welcome to our dining room. This table sees a lot of action. I love the fact that it's so unexpected. I mean, who would have thought that a rainbow table in a dining room would work? And in my house, it does. I found this piece from a fantastic dealer in London, sans pretension. He had this gorgeous table which he used as a desk. I begged him to sell it to me, and he told me it wasn't for sale. And then one day I got the call. Without even asking a member in my family if this would work for them, I bought it. When my husband got home and saw this table, he was a little shocked, but not surprised because he's married to me after all. I said, "How much fun is this? No one I know has a rainbow table." He just sort of shrugged and said, "Whatever makes you happy." And it's been a topic of conversation ever since. My kids sometimes, when they invite their friends over, they'll say, "Have you seen our rainbow table?" I have been asked, how do you dress a rainbow table for a dinner party? My answer is, like you would dress any table for a dinner party. We have placemats, we have tablecloths, we have candlesticks, plates, forks, and knives. I feel it's a neutral now. When I dress the table, I do add color because my placemats have color. I sometimes also love using those beautiful rattan placemats. My tablecloths are often patterned or solid in color. I always have dressed my table with a lot of color. So the fact that the rainbow table is filled with color doesn't really detract because I love the colors that are here, and all the colors that I use tend to blend together because, again, it goes back to the idea of designing a home with a large color palette in mind. So when you bring in the items with the colors that you love, they all work together. When bringing in this rainbow table, there came the question of the chairs. Now, usually with a table that's slightly more solid, you may want to go a bit more wild with the chairs, but the opposite is true here. We really wanted something quite sobering because the table was the main event. So we chose these beautiful chairs. They're from West Elm, and they came with a white upholstery, which I don't often use a lot of white fabric, but I thought that they were perfect. The height also gives a very calming effect to the pattern and the radiancy of the table. I love this chandelier. It is a beautiful piece of art. The woman who made this is a wonderful lighting sculpture designer by the name of Margit Wittig. She made this beautiful piece for me for the size of table that I have, and the pearls for each of these areas were specifically colored and designed to highlight the table and to work with the artwork in this space. There's not a lot of space here. It's specifically and only for dining, so we were able to use as much structural space in the skylight and the different colors to bring it all together. This piece of work was painted by a friend and artist, Laurie O'Brien. Every year I get together with my school girlfriends. There are about 12 of us, and we go on a weekend adventure. One year we found ourselves in Los Angeles, and we were invited to this very bougie place in Beverly Hills. There were a lot of photos taken. I then, when I got home, learned that my friend Laurie was doing these painting series that she found on Instagram, the study of people spending time together. She had chosen one of the photographs of our girls' weekend in Los Angeles, and she happened to pick this picture. It's myself and two of my best friends. So it's really serendipitous because she didn't know it was me because I was slightly unrecognizable in the photo. I ask you, which one do you think I am? I'm the one in the yellow skirt. So many people, including my mother, thought I was the one in the red trousers, but I'm not. This is my best friend Charla and my other best friend Kath. This is a beautiful work that I love very much. Her name is Barbara Campbell. She does these beautiful decoupage, layered, sewn, painted and fabric pieces. They're very architectural, structural, and a beautiful study on color. This brings me so much joy. The various different shades of some of my favorite colors. When I eat dinner, I'm on the opposite side and I look at this quite often. I enjoy getting to know it better and better with every time I look at it. I love to entertain. I love to cook for friends. I'm not really great on the day-to-day, but to entertain, I love it. I like having a lot of people over. I like participating in parties. The things that I make tend to be quite easy. I serve family style, right in the center of the table. Everybody can help themselves. It's quite relaxed. We often start at the beginning of the evening, sitting down, cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, snacks, and then straight to the table. I don't make a fuss. I ask everyone to be casual. I just love the idea of just spending time together and getting to know people. It's really the greatest joy and one of the most wonderful things to get to know friends, take the time, and have conversations that you don't often get to do any longer. Who talks on the phone? Everybody's forever texting. So this is really a place where we get to know our friends. So I'm going to lead you to this zone, which I call the non-committal sofa. I love the fact that this house has tiny little sections. This little corner sofa here was designed because when my children were younger and they had their friends over, there were always these mums that would come over. And I don't know about you, but my children, the minute they heard a mum was over, they would run with their friends straight upstairs and try and extend the play date as long as possible. But mums would always just stand there hoping to get their children out and never wanted to commit to sitting down for a cup of tea. But to make them comfortable, we created this little tete-a-tete corner where you could perch in a non-committal way and just have a quick catch-up while the children figure out that the play date is over. I have this uber sexy creative corner of leopard print right next to rainbow. Why did I know that it works? Is because in my opinion, animal print is a neutral. This happens to be one of my favorite vintage rugs in the property. It is a beautiful piece from the middle of Arabia. It's Anatolian and I love it because it's so soft and it's absolutely luxurious in its tone, its texture, its pattern, and its color. It brings vibrancy to a darker area of the property, and it's one of my favorite yellow tones there is. So I recently bought this chest of drawers. It was a very plain wood, oldie-worldy chest of drawers, but I loved the shape. This area of the house was a platform where we often watched the children do plays, dances, acts. And to remind me of those fun days when the children were young, dressing up in costumes, putting on a show, I wanted to create in an art form. The serpentine shape of this chest of drawers is like a stage. And I had it painted by these beautiful artists to reminisce of the days when this area was once a stage for our family. This illustration was inspired by a Japanese illustrator who loved to use traditional storytelling for her art form. And I loved it so much, and I wanted it to be playful and childlike, that I incorporated some characters from our favorite tales when we were younger. And if you look closely, there is a little Red Riding Hood and the wolf in the audience. I love ceramics. I mean, this whole property could be filled with ceramics if I had my way. This is a beautiful fruit bowl that I bought during my visit in Los Angeles a number of years ago from this fantastic person. It's called Neeland Interiors. It is from a Mexican artist. I love the playfulness, the roundness. I love the color. And I equally love the fact that they introduced this playful little terracotta, unfinished component to the bowl. I find it really beautiful and additive here, and it is a catch-all for loose wires, keys, change some of the day-to-day things that just happen. These light fixtures are from the 1970s, and I love them to bits because they could be sculptures, but they also double up as light. It's really additive to this space in the evening because it's quite dark, but I didn't want to actually put a lamp with a shade. So it really provides some beautiful lights. What I love so much about these fixtures is the fact that they are wisteria. The spring in England is absolutely beautiful. There is a bloom every month of the year, and wisteria to me is synonymous with England. It is a beautiful purple tone, and it is really, really joyful, and I love the structure of these light fixtures. Next, I'm going to take you to our living room. So this is the main living room of the house. We spend a lot of time here, day and night. We have this huge long sofa that I've designed. It's called Envelop. I love the length of it. Two people can lie down and not even disturb one another. The height of the arms are not particularly high because I wanted them to feel like a cushion as if you were in the bed. It is really designed for lounging. We could put the entire family on the sofa, including our gorgeous dog Lola and our cat Toby. This chair here is another chair from my furniture collection. It's called Transported. It has to be the most fantastically comfortable chair in this entire house. Again, the height of it is quite low, and the curvature at the back makes you feel very, very cozy. There is a beautiful traditional shape at the top. This idea of transported is because it is a very oldie-worldy chair, which I think is fantastic in contemporary spaces. Specifically upholstered it in a beautiful fabric, a chintz by Pierre Frey, and I added a contemporary spin by using a really, really taut, sort of solid color purple with a beautiful antique border by Pink House by Rebecca Cole. Next to the chair are my tables. They're called Let the Light In. Again, they have a very modern feel and a very shiny feel. And I love the contradiction between an old and a new piece. It is incredibly convenient because you can easily put a glass down. You can move it around from place to place. You can use it as an extra chair for the occasional extra guest at the dining table. They can be used indoor and outdoor. These tiny little chairs are called Perfectly Small. These are designed specifically to be like a stool, but more comfortable. They again have this round curvature back. I love them because often in these Victorian houses or these London houses, we don't have a lot of width to our rooms, but we ask them to do a lot. So these chairs could easily be turned around so that if we have a lot of people over and we feel like watching television, everybody can have a seat and be very comfortable. But equally, they can be turned facing the crowd and we can have a fantastic conversation. I love this rug. It was the first rug I've ever designed, and I love it very much because I find it to be traditional and modern at the same time. It's called Infinite Lines. It is inspired by these beautiful tiled floors that we find in Europe. I love the idea of playing with faux finishes. The idea that a rug could mimic a tile with the grout lines is particularly exciting to me. I like the way that you can play with various different textures and patterns in different ways. This is a beautiful painting by my wonderful friend and wonderful artist, Selena Baudry. This was probably the most serious and the biggest piece of work my husband and I have ever purchased. I love it very much. It actually came at the same time as I was pulling this room together. Just by accident. I just love the way that the colors dance, and it reminds me of a burst of spring, which again in this country is one of the most beautiful seasons. It looks beautiful during the day, it looks beautiful at night. I love staring with it. It gives me great inspiration for color. I applied a lot of color to my work. And I chose a palette that I think looks really beautiful in this northern light, but that has a lot of fun and a spring-like feel. There's very, very good energy, and I chose a palette and then I applied it everywhere, haphazardly, in every room, a variety of different colors, and together as a whole, it works. We are now moving to the garden room. Welcome to my garden room. This room is often used during the day. In fact, we spend most of the weekend mornings here just lounging around and reading the papers. We're quite old-fashioned that way. There's nothing like pulling out the newspaper and reading it end to end. You learn so much. This room is a labor of love. It is a very artful room. The idea of being crafty and artistic is important to me. But I also love the idea of naive shapes and a little bit of a DIY angle to it because I think it brings a lot of charm. Some people go for walks, arrange flowers, or read to relax. Well, I really love to cut paper. I love decoupage. It is a wonderful art form and it's something I enjoy doing very much. These shapes are really an extension of that. During COVID, in lockdown, I was doing quite a bit of decoupage and papier-mâché and a few other things to keep myself creative and busy and enjoy the time with my children. I actually cut all of these shapes myself. I was playing around and I just found paper and I started to create bigger, larger scale shapes. And with masking tape, I went around and just stuck things on the wall just for fun. It just dawned on me that actually anything that is sculptural and large and naive and has scale would make unbelievable wallpaper. But I didn't find any in the market, so I just created it myself. So this mirror was created for a pop-up that I did a number of years ago. It was actually used on the ceiling. It's really just 2x4 that's been painted. The idea of the shapes is really to mimic what you would find in traditional molding. But I took a Bloomsbury approach to it, and I made it slightly looser, more naive, more playful. And I love it so much because this is really not valuable at all. Through the artwork, it has become more valuable. I love it very much. It reminds me of that very creative time during that pop-up. And it's so wonderful to see it in this room. It works so beautifully with the wallpaper, the scale, and its composition. Below this beautiful 1970s vintage console table is the ottoman that works with the adjacent chair. I love this large-scale tapestry fabric. This is really a nod to the idea of this being a garden room. Tapestry, greenery is just incredibly soothing. It is beautiful and wonderful, and green is my favorite color. This is the other side of the garden room. This is where all the reading happens in the morning on the weekends. My family lounges here. We read the newspaper, magazines, we have a coffee, we catch up on the week, and we sometimes plan for the weekend because there's a lot of logistics with many children and our own activities and friends. We plan in advance and we love it. We just enjoy spending here. It's a very, very cozy room. It's a very, very soft, cushiony sofa, and the light is extraordinary. These Inuit pieces were given to me when we were just married. I love Inuit art. Being Canadian, Inuit art is incredibly important and a wonderful art piece for the heritage of Canada. What I love so much about Inuit art is that it's very naive in its approach. The colors are absolutely extraordinary. There's a northern light to them. They're very, very soft in nature. But because of the content and the shapes, I find them very contemporary, even though they've been doing this for a long time. I love these Inuit pieces. They remind me of my home in Canada. This coffee table is very special to me. I commissioned a wonderful maker and artist by the name of James Shaw. He uses recycled plastics to create his furniture pieces. It's a process he's developed. And he squeezes it out as if it's like a big ice cream scoop. All the shapes fold on top of each other. And for a surface, what he did is that he flattened it out. And the texture is extraordinary and beautiful. But it's also incredibly hard wearing. It's great for coffee cups, warm tea. The sunlight doesn't disturb it. I think it's perfect. And it doesn't take up too much room. We can just slide it to the right and left, however we need it. This is the second rug that I've created. I love it very much. It's called Reimagined. It's because it was reimagined from an existing vintage piece. It is a 1930s Swedish pattern. It's so, so beautiful. It feels very at home here. Again, the shapes are naive, but the patterns feel very contemporary to me. The colors used are soft, that mimic the Inuit art. I love the way that it captures this space and holds it together. I love the needlepoint. It is perfect for a garden room. It just feels English, but foreign at the same time. So these caned chairs are gorgeous. They're called Malawi caned chairs. I love them because rattan and caning, I feel, are absolutely beautiful in a garden room, in a living room, in any room. It brings a touch of loose, casual glamour to any space. I had it painted in this fantastic teal color. It's the same color I used in the front family room. I love pulling in colors from different rooms in different spaces. It's the way in which you hold an entire house together in terms of a color palette. I added the cushioning. I love the way that it shapes the chair and it adds that extra level of comfort. I take comfort very, very seriously. I want people to come over and stay for a while. I love these curtains. They were designed by this wonderful fabric designer by the name of Ottiline de Vries. She made these patterns and colors for me as a custom favor. What I love so much about them from her design is that they were reminiscent of the shapes I've put on the walls, so they were a sure fit. We matched the colors, she created the scale for the space, and now we're using them as curtains. I think they're wonderful, playful, traditional, modern, and appropriate for a warm but bright garden room. When I walk into a space, I immediately get a sense of what colors would work. There's a palette that develops in my mind, and I really take a very holistic approach. So I look at the color, I look at contrasting colors and harmonious colors, and I develop quite a large palette of colors. And then what I do is that I choose different colors to different rooms according to the mood you want to feel. Color is emotion, and different colors evoke different moods. So I do think about that. But I apply this large palette throughout the property, throughout any property. I don't just say one's a pink room, one's a red room, one's a blue room, and hope that they all stick together. It's a way for you to be able to confidently know that if you choose to take a monochromatic view on one room, it will work with the bottom room that you've taken a more colorful approach. It's a way for the whole house to fit together and that all the colors intermingle. And it allows you to add contrasting colors or harmonious colors in different rooms, and it will work together. And now I'd like to take you upstairs to our bedroom. Before we go into the bedroom, I'd love to stop and talk about these amazing, neat people. They are created by this wonderful artist in France by the name of Natalie Tredgett. She did this wonderful installation of these dolls where she created as if it was a butcher, and she hung all these beautiful dolls because they are actually pieces of meat. And I love it, especially Mr. T-Bone Steak. You can kind of see his name is written here. Because my nephew, who I love dearly, I have several nephews and nieces, his nickname is T-Bone. So I initially thought, oh, maybe I'll buy this as a gift for my sister. But I really didn't want to give it away. I love it so much. I kept it for myself. And I hung them just outside the door because, again, it's incredibly playful. There's a bit of irony and tongue-in-cheek in it. And I love the fact that it's a Mr. and Mrs. because it's leading to the room of myself and my husband. Welcome to my bedroom. I love this room. It is really the only place in the house that is truly ours. What I wanted to do in this room is envelop myself in just this artful, wonderful, calming space. I love the color blue for the idea that it does feel calming. And when I found this beautiful wallpaper, which is by Schumacher, it's by a wonderful friend and gallerist called Peg Norris. They work with artists to create beautiful artistic lead wallpapers. I couldn't resist. It looks like my room has been watercolored. It's absolutely stunning. You could see some touches of the watermarks in the scale of the paper. And when you lie down in bed and you're enveloped by this large scale, beautiful artwork, you really feel so comfortable, so relaxed, and really on your own. The bed tends to be the focal point in any bedroom, so it would be a missed opportunity, in my opinion, just to dress it all in white. I like to pull colors from the walls into the bed and play with the textures. Because the wallpaper is large in scale, it allowed me to choose tighter, more interesting, more textural fabrics for the bed. I've chosen to dress this bed this way to play on these textures. You have a bit of iCat pattern for the top cushions, a woolly, cozy central cushion, and I use this beautiful vintage scarf to cover these accent cushions, to pull the tones and the details from the colors of the wallpaper. Lastly, for the bed, I have this beautiful antique cloth that I found in Morocco, and I use it to cover because the touch of detail is exquisite. The headboard was custom made. I really wanted to have something very, very playful. I love the various different corners, but ultimately it's modeled after and inspired by the beautiful garden chairs we find here in England. This is a shape that you see time to time in these beautiful historical homes in the garden, and I just love it so much. It has a contemporary bent to a traditional idea. These beautiful lamps were a gift from my mother. She asked me what I wanted for a housewarming gift, and it really was the easiest decision. These lamps are beautiful and are made by my former boss, my former employer, Nicky Haslam. He found these magnificent Picasso-esque vases, which he created a mold for, and from which these lamps were crafted. The rug here is vintage. I bought it here in London from a wonderful dealer called Emily's House, and it is Moroccan. I love this soft, peachy tone. It is pinky in nature, but adds, again, this idea of serenity and comfort, and it's rather appropriate in a bedroom to look at these textural, woolly patterns because, you know, the idea is to walk around bare feet, super casual, and really feel like you're treating yourself. This artwork is by an amazing artist by the name of Daniel Hernandez. I love it so much. They're portraits of my children. I always knew I'd love to have portraits of my children, but wondered what it would be. Some of the traditional portraits, albeit beautiful, it was not something that I really wanted. I wanted something more artistic. And when I learned about this artist, he does stitched portraitures. He came over one day, took a photo of my children, and then stitched them to these fabrics. The detailing is extraordinary. He even created these beautiful shapes, the smocking of my daughter's dress, the stitching of my son's checkered shirt. He even incorporated the stitching detail of the fabric used on the chairs that they were sitting. They are a treasure to me. I love lying in bed and looking at these pieces of work. After all, they are my greatest joy and my greatest pride ever to have these 3 beautiful children that give me so much happiness and love. Now let me take you to our bathroom. In our master bathroom, I wanted to continue the theme of serenity. I used the various different tones from the wallpaper to pull out the blues that I love. There's a very soft blue paint on the wall and a deeper blue paint on the ceiling. I love painting ceilings. I love changing the colors of ceilings. They're incredibly additive and they really bring an element of surprise. I am in love with tiles. If I could, this whole room would be tiled. But what I decided to do is focus on the floor. These tiles are made by Balanium and they are painted tiles. They're very artistic. You can even see the brush strokes in them. I love this texture and pattern. It reminded me of my time in Japan. I really was inspired by the Katsura Palace. The hues of the check in Japanese culture is extraordinary and really well suited in a tile form. I wanted to replicate those patterns and bring that artistic feel even in the bathroom. These blueprints was the first interior gift I ever received. It was a gift from my mother. In the early 90s, I was a Martha Stewart diehard fan. She had such beautiful ideas. She offered these blueprints of ferns in her magazine. It was sort of a buy a 6 of these and so on. And my mother thought that that would be a really great gift for me. So I received them one Christmas and she had them framed. They have followed me ever since. They have been in my main room, in a side room, and now they reside in the bathroom. I love the way that they draw you into this space. The memory is very, very dear to me because they were given by my mother, but equally, it was also the first real inspiring person in interiors to me, Martha Stewart. She is the best, a badass. I love her. I love bathrooms that feel more like a room than a traditional bathroom. I think it's very warming and it's residential. One of the things that I like to do with vanities is sort of treat them like they're furniture. There's nothing better than finding a piece and then refurbishing it for a bathroom. In our case, because I wanted to hide some medicine cabinets and increase the mirror space for us, I created the doors as if they were facades of antique chest of drawers that open up to this cavernous space to hide towels and extra soap, the things that we all need. And equally, one of the fun things to do in a residential setting to make it feel more residential is to actually hang mirror on mirror. These were found pieces at a flea market. They were matching, and I just hung them on the mirror just to frame the area and give a little bit more of a decorative interest. The thing that I love the most about my home is the fact that it is open concept, but it has zones. We can see one another in every single part of the house, but at the same time, there are tiny little corners where you can go about and do the activity that you need to be doing, such as reading or watching television or hanging out or cooking or eating. It uses this space very, very well. As you know, large cities have a limited amount of space, so every square foot is very, very important. We want to live openly and we want to live together, but we also want certain areas to be able to block out other things. And equally at the same time, within these zones, because there are tiny little walls, it allowed me to decorate each space in its own unique way, and it all fits together from the front of the house all the way to the back of the house. Now I'd like to take you upstairs in the Hall of Memory and onto my study. I think that in a family home, it's really wonderful to hang pictures of your children, your family members, and friends. One trick I highly recommend is actually finding ways to make the composition look uniform and decorative. One way to do this is to use very simple frames and to actually highlight something on the border. In this case, I used wallpaper, the same wallpaper that exists in the adjacent corridor. It allows you to actually hold the entire composition together because it is one of the unifying themes. Now I'd like to invite you into my study. Welcome to my study. This is really effectively my home office that doubles up as a guest bedroom. I love hiding away up here in the house. It is a very cozy room. I've decided to paint it in one of my favorite colors that I created with Koenig colors. The color is called Mr. Bateman. It's this gorgeous pinky purple, and I find it incredibly soothing. I get in here and I feel lost in my world of creativity. I thought about this room quite a lot. I wanted it highly decorative, but also quite modular. It was a bit of an experiment. A lot of people in London rent, but yet they want to decorate. And I feel that they should be allowed to do whatever they want with their walls. One way to do that is to create panels. You can effectively choose to panel your room with wallpapered panels and then create a decorative effect by hanging them like they're pieces of art. Here is an example of how that could be done. This artwork here is part of a screen. The screen is divided into 3 sections, and I hung them on the wall rather than leaving them into the room because I love the idea of the shape. It's just so beautiful, the way that it's been stitched, the way that it's been painted, and equally cut out. There's something very raw about this. The color is gorgeous. It has a chinoiserie pattern, and it is a piece of artwork, and it should be hung on the wall, and it should be celebrated, even though it probably was used at one time to hide or to dress or to create a division within a room. Here is an example of an artful rendition of my perfectly small chair. It was a collaboration that I did with a vintage fashion designer, Clemmy Myers, and an artist, Selena Beaudry. Together, we created a story called Mrs. and Mr. Bateman. This chair is an example of how this all came together. It's the story of the long-lost nephew who had a horrible relationship with his mother. And he tore up all of her clothes and artwork. And when he went for therapy, the therapist said, you need to figure out how to find forgiveness. And what he did is he took all these pieces that he tore up and he stitched it together and created a chair. And now he sits on his horrible mother with disdain. I often spend days or evenings in here just puttering about, looking at photos, going through some fabrics, because I keep all of my fabric samples here. But the sofa bed is absolutely fantastic because I take the desk, I turn it against my shelving for fabrics, and I pull out the bed, and it becomes an extra room for guests. We have a ton of sleepovers here. My children have a lot of friends. I do love a full house. I want it to be full, so we have to make these rooms work for us. So this is a fantastic sofa bed, which I reupholstered in a beautiful pierre-feuille fabric in this fantastic purple, because purple is a fabulous color. This little workroom for me is incredibly inspiring. I just love sitting in here. It's so cozy. I get lost in my fabrics and my ideas. It allows me to close the door and spread out. I have tidied this room for you today. However, on a work day, there are papers and pieces of fabric everywhere. Right over here, I have a beautiful little cork board that I actually pin ideas. I stare at it during the day and allow my ideas to form. I pull things off and put things on. I add fabrics, I add photos. It allows me to really, really spend time with my projects and think of them. Every desk needs a desk lamp. But one of the things I love so much is to think about things outside of the box. When I found this desk lamp online from an antique dealer in north of England, I knew right away it was mine. The tulip shape is just so perfect for working. It has the actual structure you would need for task lighting. but it's playful, and I love looking at it. It makes me smile. For me, the home is definitely an expression of the personalities who live there. I think it's very important for everybody to just see themselves in their space so that it's congruent. When you buy things, you have to buy things that you love because you're going to be living with them, and they give back to you over time. As you share your time with these objects, you love them the more you look at them. You get to know them, and therefore to express yourself in that way and to have the courage to buy the pieces that you love, it will bring back so much joy to your life. And therefore, a home to me is a reflection of the people who live there.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.